Chapter 9 is all about decision making, and so it's a bunch of different topics that all apply to decision making. So each topic is fairly short. Okay, the first one is going to be decision making for a business. So if you were considering having your own business, your decision would depend on how much profit you think you can make. And so the profit that you make as a business will be how much revenue you bring in minus your costs. But there's different kinds of costs that you will think about. There will be the costs of things that you actually pay for, like you'll have to pay for materials and rent and utilities and whatever it is, labor. Those are all part of your costs. But then when you have your own business, you are also giving up your time. And so you have other opportunity costs that you will want to consider as well, right? So if you, for example, if you're like trained as a lawyer, you're not likely to just quit being a lawyer and start a business where you're like making cupcakes, right? You're probably not going to make a lot. You're going to probably make less money than you would be as a lawyer, right? So you're going to factor that into your decision. Whereas if you were working at Starbucks and then you're thinking about opening up a business where you make cupcakes, well, okay, then yeah, maybe you'll make more money making the cupcakes rather than working at Starbucks. So you're going to be thinking about your opportunity costs as well as monetary costs, things that you have to pay for. All right, okay, so opportunity costs are what you give up, which would include things you pay for and don't pay for. So this is just from chapter 1. So the real cost of something is what you give up. Now that will include things you pay for and things you don't pay for. So like when you go to university, you pay your tuition, and then you also are giving up your time. So your tuition, or if you have your own business, things you're paying for like wages and material, that is what we call explicit costs. So those are costs where you are actually paying money for them. And then implicit costs are the other things that you're giving up. So they're opportunity costs because you're giving them up, but they don't require any payment. So both types of costs are very important when you're making a decision. But we treat them differently when we calculate profit. All right, so there's two types of profit then. One type of profit would be the profit that an accountant would calculate for your business. And if an accountant is calculating your profit, which of those types of costs would they consider? The explicit ones, right? The accountant would just include your explicit costs. But you, the decision maker, you're going to consider everything, right? Your decision will depend on all your opportunity costs. All right, so first we have accounting profit then. All right, so this is what your accountant would calculate. They would take your revenue minus your explicit costs, and then also minus depreciation, if you have something that's depreciating. So depreciation, what's that?
The car.
Yeah, when you have some kind of equipment, it could be a vehicle or other kinds of equipment where they are losing value over time as they get older. And so that's a kind of cost because it's a loss of value, but it's neither explicit or implicit. It's just a separate kind of cost, so it's treated separately. All right, now the other kind of profit is what we call the economic profit, and this is the one that will also account for the implicit cost. This is what your decisions are based on. How much better off or worse off will I be compared to what else I could be doing? So I need to think about what else am I giving up. So the first part's the same, but then also minus implicit costs. Now, another thing about having a business is that if you have to pay for some capital, like vehicles or other type of equipment or buildings, that is not a cost. That would be called an investment, right? So when you acquire that kind of capital, you are investing in the capital. And the reason why it's different from a cost is that when you purchase a building or a vehicle or some other kind of equipment, it does maintain its value, and you could, if you wanted to, sell it. And it might have depreciated. You might not get as much money for it as you paid for it, but still it maintains its value. So it's different from a cost like wages, where once you've paid, then the money's gone. Right? So a cost is something where the money's gone afterwards, whereas an investment is something that will maintain its value. Okay, so here we have an example. Jack takes $300,000 of his savings out of the bank to buy a pizza restaurant. So that would be an investment. He's using this money to buy a building. Okay, so that is not a cost. All right, then we have, in his first year, revenues. $200,000 explicit costs for wages and materials, $150, depreciation. Okay, now those are the numbers that we need to calculate the accounting profit so far. These other pieces of information here are about his implicit cost. So one implicit cost is that $300,000 that he used to buy the building, if it was in the bank, it was earning interest, and now he's not getting any interest on it. So that is an implicit cost. He's giving up the opportunity to earn interest on his savings. So here we have an interest rate of 2%. So 2% on the $300,000 would be an annual income of $6,000. So he's giving that up. And lost income, he otherwise would be working as a mechanic. So he's giving up $50,000. Okay, so first we're doing accounting profit, where we don't include these things. We'll just include revenue minus explicit costs minus depreciation, which will be $45,000 then. So $200,000 minus $150 minus $5,000. So accounting profit of $45,000. So that's how much his business is giving him for income. Is he worse off or better off? Is he worse off or better off than he was as a mechanic? He's worse off, that's right. Because when he was a mechanic, he had that income plus the interest income. So he had an income of $56,000, and now he's only got an income of $45,000. So financially, anyway, he's worse off by, that would be worse off by $11,000, right? When we subtract the $56,000 implicit cost. So minus $11,000. Okay, so, yeah, so he's worse off by $11,000. All right, now we have an example. All right. Sue decides to quit her job as an ambulance driver where she had earned $48,000 per year. All right, now what kind of cost is that? Explicit or implicit? Implicit, good. So that is an implicit cost. That is what she is giving up. She also decides to sell a property she owns in northern British Columbia where she was earning $15,000 per year renting it. So she's giving that up as well. So that would also be implicit cost. Another arrow there. Okay, so both of those ones are implicit costs. She sells the property for $180,000. Assume the value of the property is constant over time. Okay. She uses the $180,000 of that money to buy equipment. Okay, so is that going to be a cost or investment? That's right. So this will be an investment. So we're not going to use that in the cost calculation. All right, then we've got revenue, wages, utilities, rent for office, and depreciation of equipment. Okay, so for her accounting profit then, we will not use the implicit costs. So we'll just use this revenue minus this, minus that, and also minus depreciation. Okay. And then the 15%. So we need to multiply the cost of the equipment by 0.15. Okay, so she is bringing in $108,000 per year, and that is better than what she was earning before. We haven't even done the calculation yet, but we can see, obviously that's better than what her income was before with the job and the rental income. Okay, so what's her economic profit? So what we want to do now is take this and also subtract the implicit costs, and then we'll get the economic profit, which is how much better off she is. Okay, so she is earning an extra $45,000. Good. Okay. Any questions about that one? All right. Okay, so now the next topic. So the next one is one that we've talked about already. In chapter 1, we've talked about it. And then more in chapter 4, we talked about it. Calculating marginal values. So marginal benefit or marginal willingness to pay. That's what you learned about in chapter 4. Or marginal costs. And so then we do marginal analysis whenever we are making a decision about a quantity, whether it's how much to study, how much to eat, how much money to spend on something, how much to buy of something, how much to produce of something, how much to work, how much to sell of something, whatever it is. When it's a decision about a quantity, we analyze per unit costs and benefits, which is the marginal costs and marginal benefits. And as long as for each unit the benefit or marginal benefit is greater than or equal to the marginal cost, we will continue with the activity. All right, so marginal costs and marginal benefits. So what they are the additional costs or benefits you get when you do one more unit of whatever the activity is. Okay, so marginal cost, marginal benefit, so MC, MB. So it is the extra cost or benefit, so change in total cost, so the extra amount of cost when you increase or change the quantity by one, so per unit. And then benefit, same, change in total benefit. But what the benefit and cost is depends on who you are and what your perspective is. So as a consumer, when you're buying something, the benefit is whatever satisfaction you're going to get from the item that you're buying. And the cost to you as the consumer is the price, the amount of money that you have to pay. Whereas for the seller, the price is their benefit, right? So the price is the cost for the consumer, but the price is the benefit for the seller, because that's the amount of money that they are receiving for selling the good. And then for the seller, the cost, the marginal cost, is whatever they've had to pay for, like materials and labor and so on, in order to produce the good to sell it. All right, so for consumers, the benefit is the satisfaction. And then the cost will be the price that they have to pay. But then for the producers, the marginal benefit is this price that they get paid. So for producers, the benefit is how much they get paid. And then the cost, marginal cost for them, is what sort of inputs they've had to pay for to produce the good. And everybody will continue with the activity, whether it's buying or selling or doing something else, as long as the marginal benefit is greater than or equal to the marginal cost. All right. So now we're going to go through several examples. The first one is a consumer example. So we've got Emma shopping for socks. The price is $3 per pair. All right, so for her, the marginal cost is the price. So the marginal cost is the price. And then the marginal benefit is whatever satisfaction she's going to get per pair of socks. All right. Now, this is going to be constant, right? You go into the store, it doesn't matter if you buy 1 pair of socks or 20 pairs of socks, the price will be the same. But what happens to the marginal benefit? As she gets more and more pairs of socks, what would happen to the marginal benefit? It'll decrease, that's right. So we talked about that in chapter 4, that you become satisfied. And so, you only need so many pairs of socks. And so your marginal benefit, as you get more and more pairs of socks, will keep going down and down and down until at some point you're totally satisfied and you don't want any more socks. Okay, so the marginal benefit will decrease as Q increases. Which, of course, is reflected by the demand curve, because the demand curve does tell us the marginal benefit as the quantity increases. And the marginal benefit is measured by the price that the consumers are willing to pay. So as long as the price that the consumer is willing to pay covers the cost, the person will continue to buy, and then right up to that point, that would be the maximum they would buy. So the marginal benefit is then the price they're willing to pay. It's their willingness to pay. So the marginal benefit is measured by the maximum marginal willingness to pay. Okay, so here we have a table with quantity of socks, the price, which is constant, and then Emma's marginal willingness to pay. So as long as she's willing to pay enough to cover the price, she'll buy the socks. So that would be up to here, but not for the 5th pair. So she'll buy a maximum of 4 pairs of socks. And so then the logic behind that is that by buying that quantity, that maximum, where you're right at the equilibrium, you get the most consumer surplus possible. So remember, consumer surplus is the difference between what you're willing to pay and what you actually pay. So for the first pair, she has a surplus of $3. Oops, go away. Second pair, she has a surplus of 2. And then a surplus of 1, and then 0 on that one. So she's getting maximum amount of consumer surplus, and that would be a total of $6. So just like a market is efficient at the equilibrium, because at the equilibrium in a market, there's maximum possible total surplus, it's the same idea for individuals making decisions, where you've got marginal cost and marginal benefit. If you do the activity, whatever it is, right up to that equilibrium point, you are making yourself as well off as possible, because you're taking advantage of all the opportunities to have some surplus. Okay, now the next one, I'll do on the paper. The next one is about studying. So this is an example that you guys have to make a decision about quite often. How long should I spend studying? Now, okay, in a given day, productivity will decrease as a student becomes tired, right? So what happens then is that your costs, your marginal costs will increase, right? So when you start studying, the first hour or so you're more productive because you're not tired, right? And so you can absorb more information quickly. But then as the day goes on, if you try and study more and more and more later into the night, your brain starts to get tired, and so then it takes longer to absorb what you're studying, right? So your productivity goes down, or in other words, your costs go up because it takes you longer and longer to absorb the material. Okay, so your marginal cost per chapter when you're studying is your time, of course, what you're giving up. And then the marginal benefit is, of course, marks. Let's put marks. Now here we have a table showing quantity of chapters, and we have total time. And so what we're going to do here is calculate the marginal cost, or just the extra amount of time per chapter. Okay, so the first chapter takes the person 1 hour, so marginal cost is 1 hour. The second chapter takes an additional 1¼ hours, right? 1.25 hours for the second chapter. The third chapter takes an extra 1½ hours. The fourth chapter, 1.75 hours, and then the last one is taking 2 hours. Okay, so yeah, so marginal costs will generally increase no matter what kind of activity you're doing. So the marginal cost per chapter will increase because of, I'll just put declining productivity. And then also the benefit tends to decrease, because as you get tired, especially if you're studying late into the night, then your ability to remember goes down, right, as you get more and more tired. So the marginal benefit will decrease if the student remembers less. So when you're sitting there studying, you're constantly making a decision. Should I go on, right? So you're making a decision about time, and you're making the decision in the moment, right? Should I continue? Should I continue? And so you're thinking to yourself, okay, am I remembering what I'm looking at? And how long is it taking me? And what am I giving up by sitting here and studying? And so you will sit there and study as long as you feel the benefit's greater than the cost. But as soon as you get to that point where you're just so tired that you can't remember anything anyway, then of course you're going to stop, because the benefit then is less than the cost. Okay, so the student will continue to study on a given day as long as they feel marginal benefit is greater than or equal to the marginal cost. All right, now, next example is a producer. All right, so we have a producer here. We have a cherry orchard. Now, okay, so as a seller, your benefit, first of all, so for a producer, the marginal benefit is money, right? It's money, which is revenue. We call the money going to the producer. So the marginal benefit is the marginal amount of money you get per unit, and that will be revenue, and we can call it a marginal revenue, and it will be the price that you're getting paid per unit. Okay, so marginal benefit is your marginal revenue, or MR, and that will be the same as the price per unit. Okay, so that will be the same as the price per unit. So if you're making, say, pizzas and you're selling pizzas for $10 each, then your marginal revenue is $10 because each time you sell an extra pizza, you're going to make an extra $10. Okay, so marginal revenue, we can use a similar formula as we did for marginal cost and marginal benefit. It will be the extra revenue, so delta TR, so change in total revenue when you sell an extra unit. Okay, and then the marginal cost is what you have to pay for, so the inputs. Pay for labor, materials, whatever it is. It's the cost of the inputs or the resources that you have to use to make the good. So for the seller, this will usually remain constant, which is, so this is the price, and usually the price would be constant, right? So whether you're making cherries or pizzas, the price per unit is usually constant, doesn't matter how much you produce. But the marginal costs will usually increase. So for different reasons, depending on the example, when you try to produce more and more, your productivity will decline. And so if productivity declines, then your costs are going up. Okay, so we'll talk about why. So it's sort of for different reasons in the different circumstances. So productivity usually declines, which means your costs go up. So depending on the circumstances. So like in the last example with studying, it's because your brain has a limited capacity to concentrate, and so it gets tired, and then you can't concentrate as well over time. And that's because for studying, the main input is your brain. Okay, but for farming, it would be a little bit different. So for farming, productivity will also go down because a farmer will use the most fertile land first. Right? So if you are trying to grow something, you have a piece of land, the land is usually not consistent. Usually there's little differences in the land, and some parts of the land are more productive than others. So you're going to start with the most productive part of the land, but then as you try to increase your production, then you've already used the best piece, and now you're going to have to use pieces of the land that aren't as good. Okay. Right. So marginal costs will increase then as they try to increase production. They start with the lowest cost, and then the costs go up as they have to use worse and worse parts of the land. So what that will translate into for a diagram is that a marginal cost curve will go up. The price, though, that they're getting per unit of the good is constant. And so for the seller, they will continue production as long as they can cover the cost. So as long as the price they're paid covers the cost of production, they will continue, and that would be up to there. That would be the maximum quantity that they would want. Yeah.
What about cases like, isn't it true that like as you produce more cars and like more homes, it becomes like cheaper? So like in that case, isn't that like the opposite of?
Oh, maybe you're thinking about average cost. Because, yeah, and we'll talk about that in chapter 11, the difference between marginal cost and average cost. Yeah, so it is true that your average cost will often go down as you produce more. but your marginal costs will usually go up. Yeah.
So what's different?
We'll get to that in chapter 11. It'll take too long to explain right now. Yeah. All right. So let's see. On the next page, we have an example. Okay, so here we have a table. We've got quantity of cherries. We've got total revenue. First column to fill out is marginal revenue. So that is the per unit revenue, or it is how much the revenue will increase if they sell one more unit. Okay, so the first unit increases their revenue by $4. The second unit increases their revenue by 4, right? They go from a revenue of 4 to a revenue of 8. So the revenue increases by $4. The third unit, revenue increases by $4. So from 8 till 12, so 4. Fourth unit, revenue increases from 12 to 16, so another $4. And fifth unit, same thing. Revenue is increasing from 16 to 20, so they're getting an extra $4. So this is the price per unit then. The price is, it must be $4. The price must be $4 per unit. So that the price times the quantity gives us the total revenue. Now we have total cost. And so the marginal cost is the change from one unit to the next. So the first unit costs $1. The second unit costs how much? $2, from 1 to 3, so that's an increase of 2. The third unit costs how much? 3. From 3 to 6 is an increase of 3. Good. The fourth unit, 6 to 10, so that's an increase of 4. And then the last unit, 10 to 15, that's an increase of 5. All right. Now, we can actually answer the first question already. How many kilograms of cherries should the farmer produce? So they should produce as long as the marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. And so what quantity would that be? Here's what they're getting paid. Here's what their cost is. So as long as what they get paid is greater than or equal to their cost, up to there. Good. Okay, so that would be a quantity of 4. And they would not produce the last unit because they would lose $1 on the last unit. All right, next column, total net gain. So this would be the same as calculating the profit. We are calculating the total revenue minus the total cost. Okay, so that is this column minus this column. So 0 minus 0, 4 minus 1, 8 minus 3, 12 minus 6, 16 minus 10, and 20 minus 15. Good. Okay. Now, we have, what we're looking for here is the maximum profit, which is, it's at its highest at 6. We've got 2 6s. When you have an example like that, where you have 2 maximum profits, we will always assume that they are producing at the equilibrium. So we can circle that one there. So they're going to produce at the equilibrium. Okay, so now we can answer the next question. At what quantity are profits or total net gains maximized? And again, that would be at the equilibrium at 4. Last column, marginal net gain. So now that is like profit per unit or marginal profit. So we're taking marginal revenue minus marginal cost. So this number minus this number, so we have to start down here. Okay, 4 minus 1 is 3. 4 minus 2, 4 minus 3, 4 minus 4 is 0. And so of course it's 0 there because that's the equilibrium. And then 4 minus 5, so of course they would not produce that unit because they would lose $1 in that unit. All right, so the optimal quantity Q star is where MR equals MC. And, oh yeah. Okay, that's fine. Oh, wait, let me just see. Okay, so let me just make another couple notes here. So MR is the same as the price, which is $4 here, right? So this is the marginal revenue, which would be the price per unit, and so that would be $4. Any questions? Yeah.
You also did quantity 3 for the second one, because that's the same with the both $6. So could you say
Yeah, so at both quantities there is the same profit of 6. Yeah, that's right, at a quantity of 3 or at a quantity of 4. But we always assume that people go right up to the equilibrium. Okay, so even though the profit's the same in both, we would continue as long as the benefit covers the cost, or right up to the equilibrium. Yeah, so we did the same thing with the consumer example as well. So with the consumer example, we assumed that when Emma was buying socks, she bought socks right up to the equilibrium, even though she doesn't get any consumer surplus on this last unit. So same with a producer. Even if they don't get any profit on the last unit, we assume they continue right up to the equilibrium. Now what are we doing here? Okay. Okay, so exercise 2. I think we have time for a few of these anyway. Okay. Emily wants to buy some oranges and her demand is given by this. Okay, so in these exercises, I'm just getting you comfortable with a couple other ways of representing the idea. So instead of P, we have marginal benefit, because the marginal benefit for the consumer is the price they're willing to pay. Okay. What would Emily be willing to pay for the 20th orange? Okay, so Emily's marginal willingness to pay is her demand price. That's right, which is this here. So we can put MB is the same as marginal willingness to pay, and then use the function. That would be $5. If the oranges cost $1 each, how many oranges would Emily buy? And so the dollar is her marginal cost, and she will buy the quantity where there's the equilibrium between her marginal cost, which is the price of the good, and her marginal benefit. So price, 1, marginal benefit, we just put the function here. Okay, Sam's sandwich truck has costs given by MC equals 1 plus 0.2Q. Okay, and again, usually we would write P here. P meaning the minimum price accepted or the supply price, which is the marginal cost, right? The price that they're willing to accept at the minimum is the price that will cover their cost. So the price is the marginal cost. Okay, so what would it cost Sam to produce a 30th sandwich? So Sam's marginal cost is his supply price. Okay, so MC, so 30th sandwich, 1 plus 0.2 times 30. 7. And how many sandwiches would Sam sell if he can charge $4 per sandwich? Okay, so then the $4 is going to be the price or his marginal revenue. And so that he will supply the quantity where that marginal revenue equals his cost. So he's going to get paid $4 per sandwich. His marginal cost function is that.